no matter where you turn these days, AI is the rage. You can't, articles everywhere, especially in our industry. Pretty much every industry, there's talk about how AI is sort of taking over jobs or becoming a tool to help people's jobs. The financial world, especially the wealth management business, is no different. We hear about it almost every day. In the organization, we're doing courses. But as I've said on many occasions, in our industry, especially wealth management, relationships matter most. So what AI can help you do is take away all that time that you used to spend on what I'm going to say non-relationship activities and really focus on where you can make growth happen. A lot of people who are listening, I'm sure that they've tried like ChatGPT or something similar in their business. But what I wanted to really get into is how can we start using these tools that are out there? Like what is out there? What is available to us? How can advisors utilize this technology to really help them make a great client experience, which we talk a lot about on this podcast? What is it that is more than just note-taking? So I thought to really expand upon this topic, I would bring on somebody who knows what they're talking about in this particular range, which is John Connell. John is the founder and CEO of Focal, an AI-powered platform for financial advisors. This platform is trusted by leading firms across North America. It goes beyond just simple note-taking. It also helps automate tasks, streamline client communications, boost advisor productivity. And what it's really trying to do is help advisors scale without necessarily increasing their headcount. Before founding Focal, John served as CEO of Investiture AI, a consulting firm that applied large language models and artificial intelligence to creatively solving timely business problems. So he knows a lot about this business. So, John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Chris. It's good to be here. I appreciate your time.
No, this is going to be a great topic because I get it all the time, especially right now. As I said, you can't see a news article, you can't be online without hearing how AI is changing the world, and in a lot of ways it is. So let's start with the very basics. So, John, how did you get here?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, wealth management was always in orbit, but my personal career actually started at Microsoft. I was a 20-something. They decided it was a good idea to have me manage $1 billion P&L for part of the Office 365 business. And that experience really showed me what excellence looks like on a world-class team. And then from there, I had known that I wanted to build something, moved to Silicon Valley, spent years across high-growth startups, venture capital, ended up closing deals, partnerships with companies including Nintendo, Riot, Microsoft at my last AI startup. And when generative AI emerged, I really saw what it was as a platform for opportunity, right? A genuine force multiplier for human capability. So it was my co-founder and I. We zeroed in on wealth management after conversations with advisors, finding they are drowning in operational drag. The problem was visceral for us. I think the time was right, frankly, and really the opportunity to materially change how advisors work was just impossible to ignore. So that's where Focal AI was born. And today, since then, we've raised strategic multi-stage investor capital. We are now serving financial planners across a number of firms in North America. The Asantes, the IPCs, Ritholtz Wealth Management, a lot more ahead as well that we're quite excited about.
Yeah, no, it's been great. And I was talking to somebody the other day, and we were talking about how AI is going to change the wealth management business. And I think you guys have nailed it that almost 50% of our overhead is operational processes. Right? That's really if you looked at the average wealth management firm, there's the sort of advice and everything, but that's not really the overhead. The overhead is actually how do you administer all these documents? How do you keep the processes going? How do you create great client experiences? And any way that you can automate that is what prudent business people should look at for their businesses. Now let's go back to the very basic, because a lot of my listeners happen to be, sort of in my age group, let's say, and they're not always up on all the latest technologies. So for the very basics, what is AI and why do advisors need to pay attention to this in their business?
Yeah, at its core, AI is software that can understand language, it can recognize patterns, and ultimately take action. It saves advisors time, it helps firms generate more money, Advisors today really have a time allocation problem, right? On average, you've got advisors spending 13% of their time actually talking with clients. And what we're doing at Focal AI is really multiplying that output. So if you can reclaim more than 10 hours a week from automating admin work, redirecting that into relationships, strategy growth, that's not an incremental improvement. That's structural advantage to some of what you were commenting on earlier,
Right.
whether it's filling out retirement docs, tax documentation, PDF form filling, conquest, optimizing the field input with AI. That's where something like a Focal comes in, offloads that manual work. And what we're seeing is that we're now moving beyond this experimentation stage with AI, and the firms that are adopting and identifying that low-hanging fruit, they're scaling pilots, they're going deeper on embedded projects, offloading more work across onboarding, new account client creation, sort of the long tail of activities beyond that core use case around meetings and performance coaching that we addressed today.
Yeah, no, and as I said, one of the dangers I think is there is a certain age gap that happens in our business, and I do talk to advisors, and they're like, oh, I don't need that. I don't need that fancy technology. I've been doing this for years. I'm doing well. But there's a real danger in not keeping up, isn't there? There's a whole danger that the younger advisors, or the people who embrace, they don't have to be younger, but people embracing this will have a competitive advantage. So maybe address that a little bit.
Yeah, the competitive edge is real, right? Beyond the 10, 15 hours that we're seeing folks offload on their manual tasks today, it's then a question of how and where do you allocate that time, right?
Right.
And if we are just really quite concrete here, an advisor has a 45, a 60-minute meeting, right? Historically, they're spending 30 minutes, 45 minutes prepping for that call. They then, after that meeting, spend another 30 minutes, maybe 45 minutes again, dealing with post-admin work. So it's updating your CRM, structuring those notes, delegating tasks. So what we're doing is really condensing all of that, right? No more manual meeting prep, no more manual note-taking, clicking a single button to generate personalized emails, update your CRM, as well as your planning tools. And then when you get into the mechanics there, let's say you're saving an hour, maybe 2 hours tops, right, for that process. You then multiply that by however many meetings you have a week, and that's an entire workday, right? And we've heard that on a couple of occasions now. So really it's a matter of giving you days back, and what you do with that time that sort of determines whether you grow or lose ground against your peers. And it's almost at this point, I would say, existential or required infrastructure to be successful as a firm, figuring out where that low-hanging fruit is, and then how it is that you want to most effectively deploy it in your practice to really take advantage of those gains. ChatGPT, great entry point, right? But we can do better, folks.
Right, absolutely. Well, let's get that. Now that we have sort of the foundation of why you should pay attention to all this, you founded Focal, to address these types of things. So, tell us specifically about it, and what made you decide to this platform and specifically into the wealth management space.
Yeah, Focal AI is the AI meeting assistant purpose-built for financial advisors, for planners across the U.S. and Canada. We help them automate their entire client lifecycle. That includes meeting prep and note-taking, CRM sync, tailored follow-ups, data entry across your tech stack. And today we're powered by Shaping Wealth. They are the leaders in behavioral finance, empowering advisors to ask better questions, spot conversion moments, really turning those conversations into committed assets with the visibility across all of the prior context you've had with that client. So financial planners using Focal AI today are reclaiming about 10 hours every week. We've seen north of that as well. They're serving more clients. They're closing up to 30% more AUM. What I'll say is that most AI tools today out of the box generate text, right? They're going after the generative use case. We're really taking the next step with agentic AI. So think compliantly filling out PDFs, forms, fields in your planning tools, your CRMs, multi-step action operations. On my end, consider me biased here. I didn't want to build another chatbot, right?
Right.
For me, I wanted to build something that was true infrastructure for advisors.
Right. And that's, to expand on that, many advisors, when they think of this, they think of the basic AI tools. It's just like, it's a note taker, right? I can talk, it takes my notes, it organizes it well. But what you're suggesting is so much more than that. It is actually help, as I said, if you looked at a breakdown of an advisor's practice, you have the advice aspect of it, but then you have everything else, right? Which is all sort of the behind the scenes things, but probably is at least 50% of the overhead of running a wealth management practice. And so, what would you tell those advisors? What tools can they look to, not only today, but what should they be looking forward to in the future?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. And I would say that note takers are really a gateway for a lot of organizations right now, right? They make you feel that time savings. I think that they're also a great entry point for unifying client data across your other systems, which is why Focal AI partners with firms bringing on context across the CRM, planning tools like Conquest, portfolio management, really anything else that you want Focal AI to connect with or overlay. And ideally, a good partner will be able to identify that additional context for your purpose-driven use case. Now, there's a lot of folks that I think today are probably experimenting with standalone generic note takers, right? Really solving for summaries, for tasks. If your AI is only listening today and is generating your, again, summaries and tasks, but it doesn't act, right, you're effectively underutilizing it. So what I'll say to those folks is that keep your eye out for systems that can help you really get the rest of your work done as well, right? Multi-step tasks across your tech stack, updating fields, filling PDFs, drafting follow-ups. But that's when you move from convenience, right, to that competitive edge piece that we were talking about earlier.
Well, I think part of how you could look at it is ask yourself, and this is what every business should do, what are we doing, right? So in other words, when this happens, then what happened, what we call internally, we call it an experience walkthrough. What happens? So we do this, then we do this, then we do this. And I think to your point, are there areas there that AI could help with each one of those tasks? And you could do it either in isolation or, to your point, as a sort of a step-by-step follow-through to bring that data from one place to another. And I think this is what people are not getting out of it just yet. I don't think they see the potential to it. They're just using it for those basic tools that it's that they see. So that's what I was going to say. Like when people now, even myself, for the most part, think of AI, we think of like ChatGPT, GPT. I always get that one wrong. Yeah. Gemini, some of the big brands. But what do they get wrong using those platforms, and what do they get right, I guess would be my question.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would argue that, honestly, OpenAI, Google, they're phenomenal general engines, right? But they're not advisor purpose-built systems for automation. And I think that what advisors get wrong with some of these players, right, they'll paste in their notes, they'll get a summary. In some cases, maybe it auto-detects and then transcribes a conversation for you. And they say, cool, and they stop. But they don't realize or have awareness in some cases that there are capabilities out there that go into that actionability stage, that are really, truly transformative for a business. I think that the real value, to be explicit, isn't in just generating paragraphs, right? It's eliminating steps. It's getting rid of the admin work. If it doesn't update your CRM, if it doesn't give you proactive feedback as if a Jason Pereira were sitting on your shoulders, or prepare you for your next meeting with a full-blown agenda plus a 360 on your client, right? You're still having to do work, man.
Right. That's a good point. Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of work. Now, there's a certain element, I'm going to say also, of fear in AI. There's the fear of the unknown, the fear of being replaced, the fear of becoming irrelevant. How do you must hear this as well, and how would you address it if people are like, yeah, but, I've seen Terminator. No.
No,
I think that might be extreme, but there is a general overall fear that it's either rushing too ahead and I can't keep up with it, and I also tell you this, assistants are somewhat intimidated because they think that this might at some point replace what they do and their ability to feed their family. But I would say quite the opposite, but I would like to get your perspective on it, being in that field.
Yeah, we see AI as an empowerment tool that ultimately unlocks more productive output, really for everybody along the value chain on our side. And you comment on something that is a very hot topic around the fear of this new technology.
Right.
Is it going to displace me? That rides quite in alignment with some of the compliance and the security pieces that folks bring up as well. And I think the incumbent or the contrarian perspective from somebody that's outside, myself, right. Is that AI is really a tool that can actually reduce some of that compliance risk. It will standardize your documentation. It will reduce the human inconsistency factor. We can get granular with data retention, audit trail requirements, right? I think that the real risk isn't necessarily AI, but rather it's the unmanaged AI usage, right? It's more commonly the fear of the unknown, because someone is either just too ignorant to really understand how this can compliantly be deployed in alignment with some of the regulatory bodies and frameworks, including OPC, PIPEDA, and the rest, right? But if you're playing your cards right and you're working with vendors that are not recording, not sending PII off to training models, there's absolutely ways of bringing this to your practice safely that set you up for long-term success, allow for you to keep that head count, and then ideally reallocate some of that head count to more client calls, to higher value-added work within the business. This is the productivity value chain, and everybody should be elevating as underlying productivity really boosts the capabilities of those in market.
Yeah. Now that's where I would go with it. Is you get to change what you do from the boring jobs to the fun jobs. You get to change your life from drone-like putting the same data from one place to another place to another place, to spending more time with clients, to arranging client events, to doing calls, to doing, there's, to your point, I can think of dozens of things that are better than filling out paperwork and moving it from one place to another.
Here. I mean, if you can double or triple the amount of time that you spend with clients, right? What does that do for your business? And if you've got tools that give you the feedback, the insights, the proactive behavioral intelligence to do better job prospecting or converting, these things compound in a practice over time, but it does take that first step on, I'm ready for this technology, I'm going to embrace it, and the mindset of, hey, we're effectively looking at this as another juicer for the engine, right? We don't want to be driving a Corolla anymore. Let's turn this into a Ferrari.
Well, and we started the sort of talk about what is the problem. And when I talk to advisors, and I talk to them all the time, when I'm like, why aren't you doing this? And why aren't you doing that? And they all say, that's a great idea, but I have no time. I'm like, but what are you doing? If you don't have time to do like call your clients, like if you don't have time for the very basics of this business and ask how they're doing and see if you can give them advice, what is taking up all your time? And that's why I think people should really be considering how AI can fit in their practice, because to your point, what could you do with 10 hours? So, that would be, it's a good campaign for you. What could you do with 10 hours?
If I'm an
10
advisor,
hours a week?
I mean, I'm looking at this tech, right, Chris? And I'm saying, hey, what are my goals first and foremost as a business, right? Do I want more client conversations? Do I want to save time? Do I just want to go hit up the golf course and enjoy family dinner that I've been missing out on for the past couple of weeks because of tax season? And if I truly evaluate, working backwards, what is the most optimal time to value ROI, points of considerations that I can be making? If I'm hearing, hey, this thing's going to save me 10 hours a week, that's probably something that's worth looking into if it takes 10, 15 minutes to kick off and start using my practice. Now, I think that learning curve, right, that's where it gets challenging from a mental model standpoint. Is there is an adjustment in consumer behavior that has to be made here. One is the acceptance of this new technology that you described earlier, But then two is I recognize that that is a high enough priority for me to actively go out and do something about it for my practice. And
Right.
I think that's where some of the gap is people are saying, hey, things are good enough. I already have my processes. I've got a team that does this already. Why do I need to improve? We've actually heard on a couple of occasions on the performance coaching piece in particular, where folks, they've been in industry for like 20 plus years. And they said, oh yeah, I'm not super interested in that performance coaching thing, but this meeting AI note taker sounds great. And then what they come to find out is the most value-added piece of the platform are the proactive insights, the behavioral intelligence component of how can you be a better advisor, drive better questions that then, of course, improve your conversion rates or your ability to pull over AUM.
Yeah, no, very much. And as I said, I think it's just a different perspective. And to your point, a prioritization. And the challenge is people don't see them ever becoming irrelevant. But businesses become irrelevant not overnight. It's that little piece by a little piece by a little piece until you just can't keep up ever again. So that's one of the challenges. If you read, my favorite book is Innovator's Dilemma. You don't think you could ever lose your market share until you lose your market share. And then you're like, well, now what do I do?
And it happens quite quickly. I mean,
right.
you look at some of the theory Clayton Christensen put into that book and really break out how does that apply to this current wave of technology here. There is a leapfrogging effect that happens whereby the firms that are today putting together the right layer of intelligent infrastructure and ensuring that they go the either pure AI native route or some kind of overlay system, right? Some people are going the call it data lake approach. We take more of an API less plus API oriented approach, so we can play nicely there. But in 2, 3, 4 years from now, right, if you're not already set up for these agents to be able to talk to one another, for data to be able to seamlessly migrate from system to system, for action systems to engage with your underlying infrastructure. That's where I think you're going to see a lot of call it the leaders start moving ahead, right?
Right.
And that bottom quartile performing firm either gets eaten or worse, just doesn't quite keep up with the rest of the pack.
I was going to say, just slowly dies a slow and painful death. So, which is the worst thing can happen, right? A quick death's way better than a slow and painful one. So,
Here.
now as firms are looking at AI, what kind of tips would you give them on what should they be evaluating? What should they be looking at?
Absolutely. Yeah. I would say there are 4 big areas that immediately come to mind. One is around security and compliance, right? Do they have a data center in Canada? Do they record audio or video? Are they sending that audio or video directly to an OpenAI or an Anthropic that could be training on those points of data? Where is the CTO and the infrastructure team based? The second big bucket, I would say, is around action, and specifically action capability of a system, right? Can it execute, or is it just suggesting summaries and tasks? Because you're leaving a lot on the table if you're going with a more generic horizontal solution there that just does the transcription of a meeting or a call. The third bucket, I would argue, is more of an X factor approach. What do they do that is nuanced, cool, interesting, or helps me get off the ground with deeper partnership? And in our case, it's performance coaching, right? We've got exclusive data from some of the best in the business that drive the best summaries, the best feedback systems, proactive insights. That then also gets fed into how we're taking action across other tools. And so if you've got, I want to start a household or enter a new client in Conquest, the Focal AI overlay will just auto-populate, dozens of fields in a matter of seconds there. The last piece is speed, right, to what we were just commenting on. I think that competitors are realizing quite quickly that if they are not catching up, right, the gains that others are seeing are compounding, and some of the slower moving firms are just going to lose the race. So if you're a firm in the market for AI, right, I would argue find a partner that will accelerate your business quickly. Advisors using Focal AI in our case can unlock that immediate value gain overnight. And then for organizations that require customization, we typically get them set up in a matter of days, weeks. It's a super quick process for ROI there. And I think that's the guiding light, though. It's like, what are your priorities? What are the things that are going to destroy the business? This is an existential risk. And then how do you address it head on and turn it into an advantage?
Yeah. Nope. Makes perfect sense. And so where do you see it going from here? Like, so we have some great tools today, and people are utilizing it. And to your point, we're actually seeing productivity gains in real time. Like, this is not like a speculation. This is actually happening. But where do you see it going? Like, where could it go 3 years from now, 5 years from now? Like, what should our listeners like be visualizing in their head that if they don't start this process now, here's where it could go, and you don't want to be in the catch-up thing.
It's so entertaining because even internally at Focal, we're experimenting with new tools, new approaches, connecting, Claude with command line to take care of reporting for us autonomously, for example. I think in the next few years, what you're really going to see is this transition from, hey, AI, write this for me, to handle this for me, right? So it's multi-step workflow automation, it's autonomous task orchestration across your tools, whether, again, it's an overlay system like Focal or if it's a rip and replace system that's trying to be your next CRM. And I think that smaller teams running circles around these slower adopting firms will be a continued theme as well. In the world of tech, we're seeing teams of like 10, 20 people do what teams of 100 plus were capable of doing just a few years ago. And tech's an early adopter. It's now starting to really enter the zeitgeist of the wealth management industry as well. I think that the best AI will be invisible infrastructure. It'll just do the thing that you want it to do. Right. And the advisors that end up embedding it deeply, right, they will look disproportionately productive. And that's a multiplier. That's not just a step function change, right? We're talking a logarithmic adjustment in output. So those are some of my, I think, top of mind thoughts there, Chris. I'm curious to get your read as well.
I was saying about it, like the first time we met, why myself and John were introduced, is I was talking to one of our others, and I'm like, you know what we need? We basically need something you can say, hey, fill out this form and send it to so and so. And then tell me when I have it back. Like, as I said, because I think of the average practice, how much just wasted time there is on these slow processes that are manual. And I was like, wouldn't it be wonderful if you had like AI assistant who would, all these things that you could do. And so, and you guys are doing it. Like, we had a great conversation. That's why I thought this would be a great podcast. Is I'm not sure everybody is seeing where it could go or the possibilities. And when I say that, I don't even believe it's in the way distant future. Like, this again isn't Terminator stuff. This is something that probably will come into the marketplace in the next 3 to 5 years, probably. And what I would hate to happen is, our advisors or any advisors to be so far behind in adapting it that these new advances wouldn't even be on their radar because they haven't even figured out how to do AI notes yet, let alone automate whole processes within their business. And when that happens, to your point, I think it would revolutionize your business. Because if you think of what is the wealth management business? It's advice and operations and just like one of the main reasons people pay us is to look after all their stupid paperwork and figure out where everything is and all their accounts are. Like, I'm pretty sure 50% of our income is earned just because people don't want to do that on their own. It's just too difficult. And our industry is not so, process kind. They try to think of ways to make it even more difficult as we move forward from a regulatory point of view. But I think AI is going to solve some of those. So that's sort of my view on it as well.
I love that vantage point. And if you really break it down between the person that is effectively the product, right, that's being sold, right, and the underlying operations or the infrastructure within a practice, the work to be done, the admin, if we're able to offload that admin, then personal brand becomes increasingly important in the business. And then if I'm an advisor, I'm trying to think through right now, just from a 3 to 5 year horizon, if I'm using automation tools on the back end that get more work done, how can I be really bringing the name to the limelight, or carving out my niche, or really going deeper within my ICP, my ideal customer profile, right, that I'm targeting and working with today, to really stand out amongst the crowd. And I think that will be part of the challenge of this upcoming wave, is that suddenly AI democratizes access to wealth management in a way that was never seen before. You'll have more people that need to be helping manage, what is the next generation of wealth. And ultimately, I think on my side, quite excited to be part of that wave.
Yeah, no, you're certainly in the right place, which brings me to my last question. What's next? What's next for you, and what's next for Focal?
Yeah. My focus right now is really unlocking Focal for individual advisors attached to IBDs, deploying even deeper automations for larger firms. We're going well beyond just the AI note-taking, the meeting prep pieces. I don't want our customers to say Focal AI is good software, right? I want them to say, I couldn't imagine running my firm without this. Right. So on our end, we're doubling down on agentic workflows. We are winning on compliance infrastructure. We have a Toronto-based data center, for example, as mentioning earlier, and really up-leveling every advisor, right, to perform like the industry's best through our exclusive data partnership with the leaders in behavioral finance. I'd say we're an inning, call it 2 or 3, of this curve right now, and as we continue supporting the individuals, the firms, the larger IBDs as well, there is a ton of value to be built, to be deployed, that overlays across the landscape of existing advisor tools.
I love it. Yeah. No, John, this has been great. So I don't know if you ever listen to the show, but at the end, I have a segment called the Rapid Fire Questions. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions. And I purposely never send them in advance so that you can get the best reaction. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions, the first thing that comes into your head. So the first question I always ask is, and I ask this of all entrepreneurs, what is the best advice you've ever been given?
Just do it. Nike, man.
It's so true.
That's the hardest part, right? Is the actionability, the motivation. I have this. I'm a big believer in sort of the think discipline versus the motivation mindset, right? If you have your systems, your processes, the catalysts that force action in your life, that is so much more powerful than just thinking you want to go and do something. You have to shoot the darn shot to get the ball in the basket, right?
Absolutely. You certainly regret all the decisions you didn't make. So, just do it, and to your point, and everything else generally falls in place, or you fail early. These are the 2 things that you get out of it. So,
I'd rather fail early and fast than drag it out for months, years, and realize, what am I doing?
And then fail anyway. So you just, to your point, might as well fail fast. What is the best book you've ever read?
So this one right here, Design Your Life, is one of my favorites. And it helps you think through, how do you find your personal fulfillment across the various aspects of what life has to offer, whether it is personal life, professional life, family, fun, friends, right? And coming up with mental models, constructs for really optimizing on that edge of fulfillment. So it's a different take than what you might have imagined. I could have said a tech book, 0 to 1, or one of Clayton Christensen's classics over there. Great material as well. But I think from a how do you drive to be the best version of yourself, this was a powerful text for me.
I love it. And I haven't read that one, so that's why I asked that question, because as a pretty voracious reader myself, I'm always looking for new material. So that's going to put that one on my list. My last question to you, John, is how do you want to be remembered?
That is a fantastic question, and I look towards ideals for the answer there, right? Ultimately, and we could get philosophical here if we wanted to. Humanity's operated for a very long timeline in history, and I don't anticipate in 10,000 years that anyone's going to remember John or Chris or the president that currently runs the United States. And I think the personal vantage point I've got is, as long as the people that I surround myself with find happiness, and I can say that I've lived a life with, the core principles of trust and loyalty and honesty, and have done right by the people that I've lived by, and have left the world in a place better than whence I came into it. That's, I think, where I find some of my happiness.
Exactly. And I think you'll be remembered for that. So this has been great, John. So do a little summary. What did I learn out of our little time together? I can tell you that AI is not just a fad. It's a thing, and it's here to stay. Right? It's not something that's some flash in the pan. It's finding its way. It's as a way of doing business and a utilization. There's all kinds of possibilities, and people are now just figuring out what those possibilities are. From an advisor, it can dramatically help you reduce your time spent on administration, on compliance, on these sort of tasks that you have to do, but are not necessarily the ones you want to be spending time on. What you want to be spending time on is building relationships, spending more time with your clients, solving their problems. And what I got out of our conversation is, what everyone should think about is don't get left behind. It is a thing. Yeah. It's not going away. It is going to be implemented in practices. It is going to be implemented well over time. Take the time to learn it. How can it help your business? Think about what it could do in the future. And why is that so important? Well, I mentioned this before. If you read Innovator's Dilemma, the worst thing that can happen is not that you not that you lose a client, you lose you become irrelevant. And no business person, no entrepreneur, no business wants to become irrelevant because they missed the trends that are there. So those are the things I took out of our time together. John, anything to add to that?
I love that. No, I think you hit it right on the head there. Right now is the time to act if you're an advisor. There is a window to maintain that competitive edge and really optimize your practice. I would say those that are moving fast are certainly the ones that are already realizing some of the gains there. And I think the reality is that the perspective on what is an advisory firm today will look very different, right, in the next 3-5 years with AI at its core. So keeping that open mindset and that preparedness for what technology is capable of, I think is a top priority for anyone that wants to be in this space and competitive long term.
I love it. So now, taking it one step further, John, if people wanted to get in contact with you, find out more about Focal, what they can do for their business, how would they go about that?
Yeah. LinkedIn is a great place for me. I'll share regularly about AI, wealth management, building Focal AI. We'll also be speaking or sponsoring at more than half a dozen upcoming conferences up in Canada here over the course of H1. And so find me in person at some of the upcoming events. And of course, you can learn more about Focal AI on our website and request a demo there as well. That's meetwithfocal.com. And as a thanks to Chris for taking the time to speak with me, if you're an IPC advisor or financial planner listening, associated with the organization, I would like to personally extend a 2-month free. Just send an email over to myself, john@meetwithfocal.com. Let me know that you heard about Focal AI through the Turning the Page podcast, and we'll do right by you.
Well, that's very kind of you, John. I appreciate that, and I'm sure many of my listeners appreciate it. And from my point of view, I would tell you this is the time, as I said, to really look at it. Take it seriously, because it's going to be a thing, and it's going to be a bigger thing of our business if you don't do it now. The learning curve is going to be a lot better, a lot worse later. So, John Connell, President and CEO of Focal AI, thank you so much for being part of the show.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate the time.